obviously, we're very excited that Imogen Heap's here with us, and I shall allow Sam to introduce Imogen properly. So I shall just quickly introduce Sam, who's going to be running the interview. Thank you for coming all the way from Australia, essentially, for this. So that's fantastic. It's a good start. Dr. Sam Bennett is an associate professor in music tech at the Australian National University. I got it right, but there's no Australian accent because Sam actually worked here at Westminster for a number of years, so is very well known to a lot of people in the room and certainly to the building. And I shall pass straight over to you to continue. Thank you.
Rob. Thanks so much. Well, if our minds weren't already blown by Talvin's amazing performance and discussion earlier on, then they're sure to be blown right now. We're here with Imogen Heap, who is performer, songwriter, composer, Grammy Award-winning engineer, music technology pioneer, and a real inspiration to any of us, I think, working in contemporary music. Thanks so much for coming. Thanks so much for joining us this evening. I just wanted to start by asking you about a typical day in the life, because I know today has not been necessarily that typical.
Thank you, Sam. Well,
that's okay.
As it happens, I have prepared, because I was just sitting over there thinking, I wonder if the first question is going to be, so what are you up to at the moment? And it is pretty complex, the different things that I'm up to, which sadly doesn't involve much music making. So, number one, started at 1:15 this morning. My little girl woke up with a nightmare and I had to read her a bedtime story. 8 o'clock, my girl for the first time walked into my bedroom and said, "Mummy, I'm hungry, can I have some breakfast?" She's only 3 and she's never done that before. She's never left her bedroom in the morning, so that was a wonderful moment for us. And then my third thing, then I drove her to school because I had to go to jury duty, which was 12 minutes drive, and otherwise it was 50 minutes on the tube. And then on the way, I called my friend Guy, who I was in a band with called Frou Frou, to say, I'm sorry that I can't make rehearsals today because I'm still on jury service. And then my fifth thing, I was at jury duty. And while I was there waiting, I texted Annie Lennox to say, I'm really sorry, but I have to cancel a thing on Friday because of jury duty. At 7 o'clock, I cancelled a thing for Founders Forum, which is to do with raising money for ideas, which we'll talk about later. Declined something about the Ivors, about being on the deciding about songwriting awards, because I was going to be on tour next year. Invitation to a festival in China, which I said maybe. Okay to design for the barn heating system, because that's going to turn into a production space at the bottom of the garden. And then I sent suggestions to the Artists and Musician Managers Awards for some, I work for this, freely work for this organisation called the Featured Artists Coalition, about some suggestions for artists that might win some awards. I talked about an idea called Thank the DJ app to try to get some suggestions for funding for that with a company in Denmark. I went through a deal term for a collaboration, or a kind of commission that I've got for a game in Japan, and then I've got to do that in 10 days. What's my 14? I can't find 14. Oh, then I went into jury. Then I went into jury service, and then talked about this new space in East London called the Rattle, which is a great hub for music services and music and artist entrepreneurs to try to get together to solve the problems of the music industry in a big place in Tobacco Dock. Just to give you a kind of idea of all the things. And then on my 15th thing, was in the break, I went to go and have lunch with my friend Alexi, who's my kind of assistant engineer now as well, to give me a hard drive with all the gear, all the stuff that I'm going to need to write this song with. And I realised that the idea that I was initially writing was completely wrong because the woman's wearing 50s gear, and so it's going to have to be a completely different approach. And that's quite annoying. So now I've only got 9 days to write that piece of music. And then, what else? I can't see anymore. There's loads of things. UK Music, trying to get some funding for an EU bid about the life of a song, which actually I'm doing here with Westminster students, which is an explanation, a kind of a visualisation of the life of a song and all of its business and all of its remuneration threads, and all of the people that have been championing it over the last 12 years, and the biography of that. And there's 6 students here at Westminster who are working with Carlotta, who works with another thing that I do called Mycelia, to basically create a web app so that we can discover and unearth the secrets of the music industry and see where it fails and see where it's really working, to define the black spots, basically, and where there's room for innovation. Oh, and then on the way here, I was reading my WhatsApp because I just went to Necker Island to do a blockchain summit, which is where, this is Richard Branson's private island, and I was reading some tweets about how they've just been struck by the hurricane, and the pool bar has disappeared from the pool because of the hurricane, and Richard Branson's literally there in the bunker, in the wine cellar. And then I got here, and there we go.
What an extraordinary
That's
day.
the day.
And what we were busy.
But it's just to give you an idea that, sadly, music making is not in my everyday right now, but it's looming and lingering. And I do have a plan to kind of get there eventually next year, once a lot of these projects are tied up. But the reason mainly for all of this is I had a baby 3 years ago, 2 and a bit years ago. First time mum, it was absolutely terrifying. Still is a bit terrifying, but she's worth it. And then I really found it hard to get into that space when there's a crying baby trying to breastfeed, till all hours of the morning. And I kind of went off into this dreamland about how I wish the music industry could be in an ideal world. And then I discovered this thing called blockchain technology, which is a kind of big buzzword at the moment.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what that is?
Right now we're in the Internet of Knowledge phase, where there's lots and lots of bits of data everywhere, a bit disconnected, unverified, quite a lot of it, and there it is. And you can go to a website, access data, look at it, read it, copy it, that's about it. And now the internet value is coming into our midst. A lot of people feel it's going to be powered by blockchain technology, which basically means that instead of sending like an email from one person to another, peer-to-peer, sending email to each other, like encrypted or just between you two, you could be sending a contract between you two that would be defined because everybody else on this system, this ledger, basically, everybody who's, oh dear, it gets complicated, doesn't it? But the simple thing is basically we'd be exchanging things peer-to-peer, and this could be mortgages, this could be land rights, it could be music, it could be whatever you like, really. It's about all the things, a lot of people call it the trust engine, the things where we entrust others to do third-party job, like collect our royalties for us, or a bank says they're going to send some money to somebody else, and you make sure that happens, or Visa, or whatever. This potentially removes the need for that because the trust is embedded in the system and in the algorithms.
Do you think this is a technology that established artists and musicians are more likely to engage with, or can you see it working for self-releasing artists, for example?
At the moment, nobody is going to use it because it's very, very early stages. It's like talking about how we're using the internet right now with social media and sharing our world online freely for everyone to see. You couldn't have imagined that, 20 years ago when you've sent your first email to the only other person in the world who had an email address that you knew, and that was like that for the first year. Or like when you first used I remember having my first mobile phone when I was 19, and the only other person who had a mobile phone was actually my dad, oddly. And he had this massive mobile phone. He's still got a massive mobile phone, probably the same one. And I got so excited about making this call. But it's like trying to imagine that this system now, which is very kind of clunky and there's so much regulation that's not sorted out, it's really a kind of messy space at the moment, but it's an exciting space. A lot of people are raising a lot of money, which kind of feels like play money, because these currencies, like whether it's Bitcoin or Ether or Litecoin or whatever coins there are, and there's many, many more coming into light all the time, are like fluctuating highly, and up and down all the time. So it's not really a sensible option right now, but what is exciting is this is the beginning, maybe kind of the later beginnings of this early technology, which is really a lot of people feel are going to transform our lives and everything that we do and how we interact with one another. And I think it's really important, if you're even a little bit interested, to take part in that conversation now so that we can transform the music industry, augment the music industry, because that's what the business I'm interested in, but lots of people are doing it for other industries, about how we would like to be doing business in the future. How can we embed fairness or ethics or just acknowledgement of who's written a song, where and when, in the song itself, or linking to the song, hashing to the song. So I got excited because I realised that I could hang on my wishes and my hopes and attach it to a piece of technology, which I realised quite soon was really going to do me a lot of favours, because in the past I might have been like, it's not fair, this and that's not fair. And it's like, okay, it's not fair, so what? What are you going to do? But now it's like, okay, well, here's something that we can do, and here are ideas that we can embed at these early stages about how we would like to do business in the future and how we can save money by sharing an open global database, or how we can unearth or begin a music creatives database. Because until we have that, we can't build on our careers, really, because all of our data belongs with everyone else. So it's about kind of bringing it all home, basically. The internet, really is an incredible, amazing thing, and this is an equally incredibly awesome, amazing thing, which allows us to kind of hopefully lasso all of those bits of us. And I'm talking about these things called creative passports, which is the thing that Mycelia is doing. But this idea that music makers can have a place on, online, like every one of us have the only physical version of ourselves, as far as we know. And I would go to you to talk to you about this thing. I wouldn't go to this person who's kind of heard about it roughly. I would go to you. And there's no oracle of me online. And I think until we create that oracle of ourselves in the digital domain, we can't really have any sway in any decisions or be a body of music makers that are going to be much, much bigger than the industry as it currently stands. And then we can have real sway and say in our own future, basically.
So do you see this as like a consolidation of an identity or work or business, or all of those things together?
Yeah, at the moment it's just mainly just conversations, but ultimately I think this is allowing people fundamentally to raise money using what they call an ICO, an initial coin offering, or a token sale, to raise capital like never before, which gives people like myself who don't want to have VC money because I want to make sure that any money that goes through these creative passports goes only to the artists, that there's no somebody else's pocket that goes outside of the artist's interest, like a VC, for example, and that we're not in the pockets of any one organisation or record label or service. So for the last 2 years, I've been actively avoiding kind of partnerships because I think it's really important that it remains autonomous and independent. So ICOs are kind of doing that for a lot of people with these great, big, grand ideas that are linked to the blockchain to raise capital to really hopefully make good stuff happen. Lots of people are raising tons of money for maybe not so clear exactly how people might earn it back. But this is it really is an incredible kind of fever that people are putting money into these things. So it gives an opportunity for the first time, I believe, for artists to be able to have this cash, this ability to develop services that they need.
So how do you see it being different to, say, something like crowdfunding, like this creative passport and this exchange going on in this kind of blockchain ecosystem that you describe? What I'm trying to conceptualize is what would be the potential benefits and challenges of that compared to, say, going down a crowdfunding route, which I know a lot of artists have done quite successfully.
It's a different thing, really. I suppose this is not my artist endeavour. This is a kind of artist hub to kind of connect the industry together by naming all of the industries that we're involved in, naming all of our skills, our songs, linking out into the world like an umbilical cord to all the things that we stretch out and reach, and bringing them back to us.
So there's more of an artistic network going on.
Yeah, it's a music creative
with the
network.
funding as well, with
so
this kind of raising of capital.
Yeah, the funding comes from an ICO trying to raise money for this initiative, which will then create its own economy with a different token when the time comes, when it's been developed, that will then enable revenue streams for artists that currently don't exist.
It's extraordinary that you think about music on a really macro level like this, and your proactiveness in trying to deal with it is really commendable too. I just wanted to rewind a little bit, because there was something that you mentioned in your extraordinary day about the heating for your studio in the shed. And that reminded me of the interview that you did with Sound on Sound about 8 years ago about the studio in the basement of the former playroom of your parents' house. And I thought to myself, well, it sounds like you as a musician still want that recording space quite close to you still in quite a domestic way. So do you just want to talk about that?
Actually, I did want that. And then I had a child, and then I really didn't want it in the same space because I just couldn't get any space. So I actually recently, I was just telling Talvin, I've recently moved out of that space, which is this beautiful Georgian kind of oval building, elliptical shaped building. Now living there as a creative for 10 years was brilliant, and I kind of, I had crazy parties, and I made lots of albums. I made my Grammy-winning album engineering thing there, which is basically just because I blogged about my process, and they kind of probably thought, well, let's give it to a woman. I think that's probably how I got it, because I'm really not like the world's greatest engineer, but I do kind of, do it myself. So the barn is something I just recently acquired, which is just kind of not too far from the house, which is going to become a production space. And there's a man there currently who's kind of a carpenter, and he's going to create the wood dust, which is going to create the wood pellets to heat the barn, because it's really cold in the winter. And it's the plan is to kind of turn it into 4 residential spaces and this big production space and a local community cafe, because that's another thing I really missed living out in the sticks. Well, it's not that out in the sticks. It's literally like 10 minutes from Romford, which you try to keep away from if you can. But which is also part of the reason I left, because of the high proportion of people who voted for Brexit. So I really think that bringing a community space there, a place where people could meet and talk, would help that problem there, that non-diversity issue. And have a good news digest and connect it to science and music, and have people come in and do residency. Basically inspired by opera, because I love opera music, and I just thought, wow, maybe this could be my tiny mini opera, just on the verges of Essex. So in the background I'm doing that, trying to slowly get planning permission for that. And next year I'm going to be on tour, and I hope to be doing a lot of the work while I'm on tour. But somebody's going to manage it for me there. So
what is in the immediate future for you? You've just mentioned a tour, but you're also building this production space, so it sounds like more new music is on the horizon?
Well, hopefully, yes. I'm not going to announce anything, but it would be silly to go on tour and not have a new record. But I'm not going to announce that I'm doing a new record because I don't want any pressure.
Oh, no.
But if I did do a new record, it would be an album of collaborations, because I don't have enough space in the day anymore. Because my life has gone like these crazy routes with Mycelia and the FAC and the projects of the Barns and all this stuff, and the life of a song, and the tour. Because the tour is also going to be a never-ending tour. So I'm going to do the first year, 45 cities, a week a city, 3.5-day festival, music and tech with 8 other artists, and an exhibition space and all this. But the next year, it will be somebody else. And Mycelia takes us on tour, and we go around and we give creative passports to all the artists who come through the doors, and we knit together this ecosystem physically as we go around the world. That's the plan. So a lot of that is planning that. I have to also start and finish the Harry Potter soundtrack for the play, because that's coming into Broadway next year, and I did the score for that, which is a 2.5-hour score of 100 different cues, and I did it sat in a theatre seat for about 4 months while watching it, just cramped, actually really hurt my back, with just my headphones on and Ableton, and all the stems from 20 years of work mixing into this new version of something, this crazy Heap world meets Harry Potter world, which strangely works I don't know how it does.
It's
but
great
it does.
that you brought that up, actually, because that's, I think a lot of us are very aware of your innovations in music technology, the Mimu Glove project, your work with Mycelia now, and also your albums, which stand alone in their own right, are all phenomenal. But what's not so much discussed or so much known about you is how much work you've done scoring for television, for the stage, for screen. It's quite amazing the amount of composition work in those areas that you've done. And I just wonder, what are the differences between sort of composing and writing for stage, for screen, than writing, say, an Imogen Heap album?
Yeah, it's so much easier. Because you've got a ton of people going, that's good, that's rubbish, that's good, that's rubbish. And you're not just in the studio going, is this any good? I don't know. I'll just ask myself in 10 minutes' time, is this any good? So having that feedback is just like a dream. And I really, really moved and worked so fast with Harry Potter. Like, literally 2.5 hours of music in 4 months and fully produced and ready to go. Whereas an album can take years and many, many, many versions, but you just don't have the luxury of time, and that's great, you know. But it's also, you know, it's also hidden under dialogue, so you can get away with something that doesn't sound so pristine because you're like, well, come on, I've got to use my time wisely, and they're not really going to hear like 90% of that stuff. So as long as it gets the vibe across, then I'll deal with it. Whereas if I'm in the studio on my own record, every single sound, every single tiny little detail frequency has to be like beautiful and be listenable 20, 30, 40 times over, and you still find something new in it. But you're only going to see Harry Potter play once, probably, because it's 5 hours long, and the queue is like the length of the planet. So it's a very different beast, yeah.
Yeah. The sense that I'm getting, just talking to you for this short time, is that you're known as a solo artist, as Imogen Heap, the solo artist, yet I'm getting the sense that your work is so collaborative and that your future work is going to be so collaborative. And I just wonder, have you already established these global links that you're going to go on tour and explore, or are these in the pipeline that you're going to make as you go along? What's the plan?
You mean the spaces that we're going to go, the cities that we're going to go to?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so this is going to sound mad. I was literally just writing yesterday the kind of draft blurb of what I'm going to try and do next. And so it is this tour, but it's a chicken and egg, because you're going to need a lot of money to pull together a year's worth of touring, a year's worth of wages for about 30 people, and we really want to pay the artists really well, and we've got exhibitions to do and installations to make, and there's a lot going to happen. And trying to go to Performing Arts Centre in somewhere like, you know, Mumbai and go, hello, I'm Imogen Heap. You probably don't know me, but I really want to take over your whole Performing Arts Centre for 3.5 days for this thing called Mycelia. I know that sounds a bit odd, but trust me, it's going to be fine. They're going to be like, okay, as long as you make sure that you can buy our Performing Arts Centre for those 4 days, we'll probably be okay with that. And then it's up to me to bring the people in. So as far as cities go, usually I would do like a 25 date of the States, and I'd do like 10 shows in the UK. But that wouldn't work if we're doing a city a week, because that would take me like, you know, plus all the other places a couple of years. And I've got to get Scout to school by September 2019. So that's the deadline. And so, yeah, I'm probably going to do 8 shows in the States, like 4 or 5 in South America, which I've never been to. And I'll do a couple in Canada and, you know, maybe 3 or 4 in the UK. But I'm going to go to places where I've never been and engage with the local artist community and the local industry to try to help, again, with these creative passports for Mycelia, trying to connect the industry into these creative passports so that it really becomes the connective tissue, the useful connective tissue between royalty collections for whether it's songwriting or mechanicals or recording, or whether it's you know, your radio play, or whether it's just all of the songs that you've written, or I'm going off on a tangent, but basically to try to, I don't know the cities. I do know roughly the cities. But what I'm going to do at the end of September is put a little website up, which I haven't announced yet, to say, I'm going to be going on tour. We need to sell some tickets up front. And I actually don't even know if this is legal, for you to sell something that doesn't currently exist yet. I just discovered this. But it might be okay for a ticket. It's not like it's not a radio or something, it's not a thing, it's a ticket. So hopefully,
an event.
But it's all a bit, basically reaching out to my fans going, look, I want to do this tour because I've got a family now, I've got all these projects, I only feel like I'm really sharing 5% of me when I come and do a show, and then I leave I do a different show every night, and I see these amazing cities through the tiny little window of a bus. So I just want to engage more, and I want to connect more, and I want to tour slowly. So asking my fans, probably going to look around £150. I know that sounds a lot, but they're going to have, and this is unannounced, please don't talk about anything like this to people. So it's going to be an acoustic Imogen Heap intro, one on Thursday night. On the Friday night, it's going to be a frou-frou show. And on the Saturday night, there's going to be my big show. And there's also going to be touring artists who are going to be with us. There's going to be a kids show, there's going to be VR stuff, AR stuff, AI stuff, blockchain stuff, tons and tons of stuff. And then, so that ticket will get you front row seats, basically. And the idea is to try to get those enablers, fans who are going to enable the tour up front, to give us some real room to try to develop the things and buy the Performing Arts Centre's space so we can control the tickets. So I'm asking my fans to buy a ticket for a city they don't know, for a time they don't know, for nothing that they know really, just to say, believe in me, buy this ticket, we're going to make this thing happen, you're going to be, have the best row, the best front, the best seats, and get tickets to all of them, and a big thank you, and a few other things, maybe a new record if it comes out, if I do one, and yeah, it's a crazy ask, but because hopefully that whatever they're buying a ticket to nowhere particularly, they're just buying a ticket for the experience, and they can then, if they want to, instead of going to New York or Birmingham, Alabama, they might decide, I'd quite like to go to Barcelona, and they, organise their holiday around Barcelona, and then there's like 3.5 days of Heap fans and tech fans, and you can kind of go as a learning experience and meet tons of people. And we're going to plant lots and lots of trees, because, to take the mycelia metaphor even further, mycelia is the largest organism in the world that lives beneath the ground, and it connects trees and mushrooms together. And I see that the network of creatives and songs as the organism that kind of powers our music industry, and if we need to protect that and look after it and nurture it. So that's why it's called mycelia. But as we go around the world, plant trees to apologise to the planet and try to make up for all the displaced fans who will be going all around the world to all the different cities.
Well, that sounds very exciting. I think we have about 10 minutes for some questions, if anybody has any for Imogen.
This is really a prompt more than a question, because we're involved in the Council of Music Makers, and I wondered if you would like to tell everybody about what that's all about.
Yeah, certainly. So the Council of Music Makers is a body of 5 organisations who represent music makers, the creatives. We took a long time to decide on the name, but we are now there. And really it's a crop of people, organisations who've come out of the UK music kind of big board table, feeling more recently we tried to get together a kind of manifesto or an agreement between labels and artists that they would sign to say that they would agree to a duty of care, to transparency, to fair remuneration, and to something else I can't remember. And they got, it was called the Code of Practice, about how labels we would like them to be, which was totally like, as why wouldn't they sign it? But there was some issues around transparency, shall we say, and we never managed to get this thing out and agreed. And so as the music makers decided that it's important for the voice of creatives to reach government as much as the big industry. So around the table at UK Music you have, so we've got like Basker, who represent composers, you've got PRS, who represent writers as well, you've got you've got the Music Producers Guild, who represent producers, you've got the Featured Artists Coalition, who represent the recording artists, those who sign the contracts, and then you've got the Music Managers Forum, who represent the artists, but they're good guys too, and then you've also got who else? The Musicians Union, who represent the live musicians who perform and all that kind of stuff. Who may also be a featured artist, but they also, predominantly, like 90% of them are session musicians or performers who don't record their own music. So that's what we've done. So we've created this Council of Music Makers, and we're putting together our manifesto. We're quite early on, and the idea is just that whenever we don't make an agreement with the big body of the BPI, the British Phonographic Industry, and maybe the PRS, and if we don't meet an alignment, and we can't put forward one voice, then there's another voice for the creatives who can go and are recognised to do that. So that's why we've done that. And it's turning out great, actually. It's a really good thing to do. Thank you for the prompt.
What leverage do we have against Spotify? And is blockchain going to enable that, do you think?
Yeah, good question. So I think okay, so why I'm excited, because I think essentially blockchain, I hope, will encourage transparency along the value chain for music makers and all the people along the way. Anyone involved in a song hopefully will be able to see clearly where they receive their money from. At the moment, that's not clear. And currently, music services like Spotify or a company called 8 Tracks or Weave, another one, new one, or there's a million different ones that are trying to work it out, and iTunes. The big services have lots of VC money to go and essentially have license to play the music on their service by having a ton of cash, that they have to pay the record labels for the honour of having the music on their service in advance, and basically an advance payment on any money that they may play, any music that they may play over the course of a period of a month. And so it means that they have to come up with a chunk of cash in advance, and if you're a music startup, that's like a no, you just can't do that because you don't have all that money. And why should they, take money in advance? And a lot of that money, this is where the transparency issue might arise, is that we don't know what those deals are as music makers. We don't know what has been done on behalf of our music, and we will never know because it's under NDA. So what I would love is that anyone developing a service can approach artists directly or automated by way of like ticking a box on your creative passport. Yes, I agree that a new service can use my music as long as they pay me when there's a commercial, mechanism to do that, or they can have it for a period of 3 months until it becomes cash rich or whatever, to enable innovation to happen, because otherwise we're just stuck with these big companies who can only afford the huge amounts of money that the 3 big labels are asking to have their works in advance, and it means that we don't progress and we don't grow. And Spotify aren't making money. They're not making money, and that's not good. We want services to make money. We want good services to come up. We want artists to be paid fairly. We don't want lots of money going into people who are not going to be feeding that back to the artist community, because that doesn't help new growth, and it's not a sustainable ecosystem. So I think the possibilities of blockchain are allowing that discussion to happen, and a lot of people are kind of going, I can see why it's a bit broken, because I can see what blockchain is presenting, or people are presenting as a future ecosystem, and how this is very different from this, and how can we help get closer to this. And so I think the Spotifys of the world, they really want an open global database, because they want to know who to pay. They are artist friends, they are artist fans. They built the service because they're fans of music, and they wanted to do this service, and it's a great thing in many ways. It's just tiny payments, and a lot of money going outside of the music community or the music makers. So it's a step. I think Spotify have done a great job, and so have iTunes, of making people, allowing people to pay for music easily. And what Napster did 20 years ago was incredible. It was amazing. People could, from a scarcity of being able to get a hold of music to an abundance of whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted. Like, how amazing is that? And unfortunately for the industry, they didn't latch onto this and make something good out of it, they kind of went, that's a bad thing, rather than accepting this as a great innovation and how can we work now together to make this, and then we wouldn't be so detached as we are now from metadata to the songs, so that we don't know who's written on anything anymore. We don't know who the producer was, we don't know who the engineer was. None of that data is attached, and that's because there was a sudden shift from physical, where all this data was in the liner notes, and then these MP3s everywhere, just like uploading, and there was no way, there was no package or format to have all of that other data embedded within it somehow. And so it all got detached. And as a result, a few people do really, really well in the industry, a few session musicians do really well, and lots and lots and lots and lots, 99.9% of people don't do really well. And that's always a misconception when we hear of, the great success of Adele, and good for her. But that's not the reality of how well the music industry is doing. And that's always a distortion. But yeah, good things are coming.
There's another question here.
He had that lovely term, ambient credit, which for musicians just kind of sounds like everyone's just getting royalties for whatever they do online, which is similar, I guess, to what you've been doing, Mycelia. But I just wondered, because you're so involved in it, what you would see as a kind of tipping point from going from a very small number of very successful companies to what is a bell curve, which is really, again, what you're talking about with that kind of networks.
Because I have spent, until I first heard the word blockchain, it was April of 2014, I think. And I was like, this sounds interesting. And I lost 5 days of sleep just researching. But I've been trying to figure out, what can I do? Realistically, what am I going to do? I don't want to create, I don't want to create a monopoly, a music service that does everything. I want to encourage innovation and new services to come up to create healthy competition, so that we get the best services out there. So I think for me, the tipping point is what I'm kind of doing, and I'm hoping that when we empower artists with this creative passport, we really, really hope to be able to raise a lot of money via an ICO, which God knows if we're going to be successful. But the idea is to use the 222 songs for 60 cents worth of ether each. Was the song called Tiny Human, which was the first song to use smart contracts to distribute money to all of the musicians involved. And that raised $132 or something. I don't know, you do the maths. It was a tiny amount. And look, a few people went, Imogen Heap only raised $132 from her thing. And I was like, that wasn't the point. It's really hard to get ether at the time. It still is a bit. Anyway, the point is that 2.5 years later, those 222 downloads of that song is now worth £35,000. Pretty cool. So that £35,000 is now going into the development of the white paper and a bit of technology and some press and some legal work into the pre-ICO, which we're going to hopefully hold at the end of September, which will then, throughout the period up until December the 9th, we're going to launch an ICO for Mycelia. We're roughly going to do it around discount tokens, and I won't go into the details, but that's kind of what we've discovered is a way to get us around any kind of regulation or problems with the SEC in the States and any legal problems. And so basically, I think the tipping point is millions of creatives getting extremely excited and positive for the first time about, wow, this is for us. This is only for us. We are going to earn money for this. And what I really want to make is a database of creatives that is so incredibly useful for all the services out there that they are dying to work with us. And as a result, they pay for the use of our data, which we put up there. And I'm talking about things like what brands of gear we use, or what songs we've written. Or I don't personally think that. I imagine that there's going to be an open global database of songs, which is separately going to happen anyway, whether it's like the PRS decide to do their public thing, or maybe there's going to be a Spotify, or who knows, who's going to release this. But there is going to be one, because it's just everybody's talking about it. It's going to happen, and it's desperately needed by services. So that's going to happen, and when that does, I want these creatives to be empowered with the ability to be able to verify that they are their songs, and to in time be able to share greater detail and confirm amongst a creative group around a song, that is said and true, and that they can be verified to do that. But then they also create a marketplace for musicians and link up to existing services. There's a great new service called Vibrate, which is for like the 90% of artists who maybe don't have agents who want to get a gig. So it's a way to rate bands or any live musician, so that a promoter can look at it and go, oh, we need a new act for this thing, let's have a look at their Vibrate profile. So that would be something that on your creative passport, I imagine you would tick, go, yes, I want a Vibrate service to power my creative passport. Yes, tick, I want the PRS to collect or verify that these songs are mine. Or tick, I want to use Orderly or whatever it is. So Mycelia kind of acts as a stamp of approval, and that will need a lot of people to do that. But it will also enable every time somebody has a service that's connected to these creative passports, will pay for the use of the ability to reach all of those artists at one point, which will then come back to the artists by way of tokens. So I think the tipping point is going to happen when we get, obviously, thousands and millions of artists and creators all over the world having this thing, which gives us then completely tips the balance of a verified body of creators connected around the world, which ultimately all services want. They want to get in touch with us, and so we need to make that happen if we're ever going to shift the balance.
It's been amazing and very wonderful to have you here, and thank you so much for ending our first day on such a positive and hopeful note when a lot of what we hear in today's discourse is sort of doom and gloom about, well, where is everything going to come from? And I think it's just amazing that we have such an innovator who's standing up and saying something positive and the future's bright, and we're looking forward to it.
Well, I have lots of inspiration. I could give you a big list of names who've inspired me over the last couple of years that are really, my strength, and there's a few other artists in there as well. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm not doing it alone, but a good team and a good support base. Yeah,
that's great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Imogen. Heap.